While studying in London, I picked up a flyer recruiting someone to take care of the estate. 500 per hour later, I found out that the owner of the manor was a vampire. Vampire's face was pale, and his eyebrows, eyes, and lips were as beautiful as blood. My little Rose, where do you want to escape? In my first year of studying in London, my wallet was stolen at the train station, when I was about to starve to death on the street. I picked up a flyer that fell from the sky. The owner has been on a long-term business trip and hired someone to take care of the manor, with an hourly wage of 500. The inscription is a Gothic Sheffield manor, and the edges of the letter are wrapped with a pattern of thorn roses. Fake, but looks like it's real. I gritted my teeth and knocked on the door of the manor apprehensively. I was greeted by a blue-eyed old man in a decent and old-fashioned black tuxedo. He didn't show any surprise, and bowed to me gratefully. "You're here." I was stunned for a moment, and hurriedly raised the crumpled flyer to explain my intentions. "Hello, my name is Yang Shi. I'm here to apply for the job of taking care of the manor." "I know." He smiled politely. "I am the butler of Sheffield Manor, you can call me Alan." I responded randomly and followed him in silence. The courtyard is well maintained, the lawn is green, and the roses in the flower garden have buds. Everything is in order, and it doesn't look like the owner hasn't returned home for a long time. The castle is extremely luxurious, with Gothic decorations, gorgeous and mysterious. The master bedroom is the one at the end of the corridor on the left side of the 4th floor. And you can choose any other free room. The courtyard, banquet hall, and other rooms will be cleaned by a dedicated person, and you only need to clean the master's bedroom and your own room. And I tried to understand his words and asked slowly. "Have I already gotten this job?" "Yes, Miss Yang." Seeing that I couldn't relax on my face, Alan added softly. "You are the only candidate. You can go anywhere on the manor, except the attic on the top floor." I instinctively felt dangerous, but when I was looked at by those gentle blue eyes, I nodded bewitched. "Please take care of the manor. I wish you all the best, Miss Yang." On my first night at the manor, I had a spooky dream. I was drowning in the dark, unable to move. Then, the door opened, and light came in. I heard rhythmic footsteps, getting closer and closer. One sound, the heart beats like a drum, against the light. I couldn't see the man's face clearly, but I felt cold and hazy. He stopped in front of me and leaned over slightly. The next moment, a scepter inlaid with various gemstones, gently patted me on the cheek. "Cold and luxurious. It's cool." I heard my helpless whimpering and the man's hoarse voice. "Don't worry. We will soon be together forever." I tried to raise my head and meet those beautiful eyes. The cold palm slowly stroked my hair and then covered my eyes. His tone was as light as a sigh. "Don't look at me like that, little Rose." I woke up suddenly. When I went downstairs with 2 pandas, Mr. Butler was already sitting at the table. Butler put down the tableware in his hand and smiled appropriately. "Good day, Miss Yang. Did you sleep well last night?" I remembered that strange dream last night, and suddenly I didn't know how to speak. Perhaps the hesitation on my face was too obvious. So he waited patiently for a while and asked with concern. "If you have any doubts about the manor, you can ask me." The heavens and men in my heart were fighting for a long time, and suddenly I caught a glimpse of a thick stack of banknotes pressed under the plate. I slowly raised my eyes, met Mr. Butler's smiling blue eyes, and shook my head gently. "No, Mr. Allen, I slept well last night." The housekeeper is elusive, and every morning when I get up, I can find a lot of money on the table. That's how I started my life of working and studying. Professor Eugene, who is in charge of the humanities course, likes to talk about local folklore. For example, local specialties only exist in the legendary ancient vampires. The vampire count sleeps in the castle, and he will wake up when the bloody full moon appears to resurrect his bride. He instructed the bat to kill the white dove of God, and instigated the thorns to strangle the lily of the holy sea. He seduced ignorant girls, and he was miserable forever. Then God will send down brimstone and fire, and will burn all sin to ashes. The red-haired man, who failed the course and re-examined with me, muttered to himself. I heard that the vampire count loves the black-haired and black-eyed oriental girl the most. I listened to half and forgot half of it, and I didn't take it to heart. After all, this part-time job is really easy, and you only need to simply take care of the host's room every day to get a considerable remuneration. I don't care. Starve the timid to death, and support the bold to death. Entering the rainy season, heavy rain always comes suddenly. On the night when the cold rain knocked on the window, I was about to turn off the lights and fall asleep, but suddenly remembered something. I opened the window of the master bedroom for ventilation in the morning. As if it hadn't been closed, the master bedroom is covered with luxurious Persian handmade carpets, so delicate that they are afraid of being scrapped if they get drenched in a little rain. I can't afford to sell me. I jumped up with a spirit, and without wearing shoes, I was about to run to close the window. Ran to the end of the hallway, only to find the door ajar. I was a little confused, but I didn't think much about it and turned on the light. Oh no. I closed the window, slammed, and rolled up the carpet to check it painfully, feeling a little calm. Fortunately, the floor is fine. This one is more expensive. I was just relieved when the lights in the room suddenly went out. I opened my eyes wide in the darkness. Power outage. As soon as I thought about it, a huge force suddenly came from behind me, throwing me to the ground. The next moment, a sharp tingling sensation came from the neck. I snorted. And the flash of lightning and thunder. Through the faint white light, I saw the face in front of me clearly, with silver hair and green eyes. She was as handsome as a deity. If it weren't for his lips, 2 fangs stained with my blood. I suddenly remembered the vampire legend the professor was talking about, and cold sweat soaked my pajamas. He looked down at me for a long time, his eyes a little confused. The wound on my neck was still bleeding, and my long silver hair hung down on the side of my face, cold and itchy. And the ultimate silence, only the sound of dripping rain, can be heard. I was so frightened that I couldn't move, and suddenly I heard a cold sound, like the spring ice on the Danube River. You? Who is it? For hey, Yang, come back to your senses. Wandering thoughts were pulled back by the clamor of the red hair. I subconsciously stroked my neck, which was clean and untouched, and I didn't touch anything. Is it my dream again? Yang, can you hear me? I put down my hand and sighed. Lawson, you are noisier than Professor Eugene's pigeons. The red-haired sneered and retracted his hand, shaking in front of my eyes, muttering. They say that the new professor is a greened beauty. I'm in a hurry to talk to you, Yang. You definitely haven't seen a greened beauty. I subconsciously replied, who said it? I've seen it. Lawson was curious. What does it look like? Green eyes, long silver hair, wearing a long black trench coat, skin very pale, like white porcelain in the East, with a cold and cruel beauty. I casually rummaged out the borrowed textbook from my satchel and said nonsense. After waiting for a long time without making a sound, I turned around strangely and saw his stiff expression. That mouth that couldn't stop was still lip-syncing at me. Honey, say a few words. Following his gaze, I looked up stiffly and met the new professor at the door, silver-haired and greened. Cold and cruel beauty. Mr. Vampire in last night's dream. He looked at me for a moment and looked away coldly. This is the new Professor Lester. Hong Mao held back his laughter and whispered in a breathy voice. I pinched the red hair that was holding back my laughter and was about to die, and my heart was like ashes. When the footsteps passed in front of him, there was a brief pause. Like an illusion. 5 I sat in a daze for a class, and the only thing I remembered was the professor's name. I tried to ignore the gaze that fell on me, and when the bell rang, I almost ran away. When I got up, Hong Mao shouted something behind me, but I didn't hear it clearly. The new Mr. Lester was just too eccentric. As I turned around the utility room, I suddenly smelled a strong smell of blood. Getting closer, there was a low cry. The door was closed tightly, and a small crack suddenly opened. I paused, and just as I was hesitating, the door opened. Yang! Why are you here? It was Professor Eugene. I looked at his cuff in surprise, where there was a large smeared blood stain. You? He was injured. Professor Eugene followed my gaze. His face changed slightly, and he smiled at me embarrassedly. Sorry, didn't scare you, did you? I shook my head, and saw that Professor Eugene was hanging his eyelashes, and didn't want to talk more. But he still swallowed his question. Professor Eugene left in a hurry. Before leaving, he glanced at the sky and told me, "Go back early, Yang." He paused. "Don't look up at the moon tonight." Professor Eugene's figure disappeared at the staircase, and I hesitated for a moment, turned around and pushed open the door of the storage room. The faint smell of blood has not dissipated, and in the corner, there is a bullet shell reflecting silver light. I leaned over to pick it up, and in the blind spot of my vision, a black shadow suddenly appeared. It was a man covered in blood. The wind swept through my eyes, and the blood dripped all the way behind me. Wait, you stop. I subconsciously got up to chase after it. By the time I stopped out of breath, it was half a night. The black shadow has long been gone. I gasped for breath on my knees in embarrassment, straightened my waist, and realized that I had chased the church. When I looked up, there was a beautiful glass window in front of me. The stained glass in the twilight reflects a heavy light. I felt as if I had been bewitched by something, and subconsciously reached out and knocked on the side of the stained glass. It seemed that someone had moved. The next moment, the glass window was pushed open from the inside. I was immersed in the shock that the glass windows of the church could still be opened, and I didn't come back to my senses for a long time. A beautiful blonde young man poked his head out, and there was a little displeasure in his light golden pupils. I swallowed subconsciously. No. I'm sorry. The young man frowned and looked at me for a long time, and suddenly made a sound. Why do you have the aura of an apostle of darkness? Huh? I couldn't react to his words and froze in place. He squinted his eyes and aggravated his tone. It's a vampire. It was already evening when I returned to the manor. Half of the sofa was leaning against a figure, and Mr. Butler stood respectfully beside him. Without turning on the lights, I saw the silhouette of Déjà Vu clearly through the twilight. I paused and lowered my head deeply, trying to reduce my sense of existence. As I approached the stairs, I was stopped by the housekeeper. Miss Yang. I stiffened my neck and turned around stiffly. Mr. Vampire in last night's dream looked at me and hooked his lips very lightly. The tone was familiar. Like an old friend, who had known each other for a long time. You came back so late. Who did you meet on the way? I subconsciously protected the contents of my pocket, and shook my head gently. Mr. Lester didn't care, just motioned for Alan to prepare dinner. I lowered my head unnaturally and stared at the tips of my shoes, and the young man's admonition echoed in my ears. Vampires are a race abandoned by God, neither belonging to heaven nor accepting into hell. They are the abyss that will fall into the world forever. Yang Shi, don't try to stare into the abyss. The words of resignation circled around the tip of my tongue, and I gritted my teeth and was about to speak. I apologize to you for last night's rudeness, Yang. Mr. Lester sincerely apologized to me, and was willing to pay me 3 times the hourly rate. I swallowed the words of my resignation, and happily accepted his apology. He gave too much. 6 When Mr. Lester returned, Mr. Butler did not inform me to stop cleaning the master bedroom. Early the next morning, I hesitated for a moment and pushed open the door to the master bedroom. Heavy curtains block almost all light. It's dark, and it's frighteningly cold in the bedroom. The crimson gilded bed curtains hung down on top of each other, blown away by the wind that accidentally leaked in. I was bewitched and walked over lightly. Then the ghost sent the gods to lift the curtain of the bed. Mr. Lester closed his eyes unconsciously, his long silver hair spread between the pillows, and his hands were neatly placed on his chest, like a beauty who is asleep in a fairy tale, waiting for her lover to kiss her awakening. If you ignore that he is not breathing, the hand that lifted the curtain was slightly stiff, but I couldn't control my gaze at him. It's really strange, it's obviously the first time I've done such a rude thing. But subconsciously it's like I've done it thousands of times. It's terrible, Yang Shi. There was a voice in his heart shouting. While he is not awake, leave quickly. Just pretend that none of this has happened. The antique clock on the wall walked unconsciously. I stared at his face in a daze, and a long ago fragment suddenly flashed back to my mind. Mr. Vampire lying in the coffin reluctantly opened his eyes. You shouldn't have come here, go back quickly. Someone coquettishly hugged his left hand. No, I want to be with you, or you can join me. I had a splitting headache, and took a deep breath to come back to my senses. Mr. Lester woke up at some point, and his beautiful eyes looked at me for a moment. I was shocked to realize that half of my body was already propped up above him. I was so hot in my ears that I subconsciously wanted to get up and apologize. The hand that had been held for too long was already stiff. My body moved, and my whole body lost its focus. The next moment, the whole person threw himself on Mr. Lester. He caught me. Yang Shi. From this angle, only his slightly moving Adam's apple could be seen. I was confused and trembled and said, Sir, I am rude to you for my recklessness. Shush. Lester interrupted me softly. Listen to me, Yang Shi. You shouldn't come here to entangle vampires, it's dangerous. I looked at his drooping eyelashes in astonishment and whispered, I don't understand, sir. I don't understand. Flyers falling from the sky, eerie manners, and strange dreams. Mr. Vampire and confused memories. It was like the guidance of heaven in the dark. Lester's eyes were very gentle, which meant that he cherished them. You'll understand, Yang Shi. It's just that if that time comes, I won't let you go again. The last sentence was so light that I didn't hear it clearly. What, sir? He closed his eyes and didn't speak again. 7 Mr. Lester and I tacitly talked about it and never mentioned it again. Mr. Lester was elusive, and rarely met him except for the occasional dinner. Alan kept silent about this, and no matter how much I inquired about Lester's whereabouts, he didn't speak. Miss Yang. When I inquired about Mr. Lester's whereabouts for the 47th time, Mr. Butler, who had never been emotional, finally sighed helplessly. Why don't you ask sir directly? I propped my chin and thought about it, and suddenly it was enlightened. At the same time, for some reason, the legend of the vampire began to circulate in the school, and the atmosphere was strange for a while, but no one took this inexplicable anecdote to heart. Until someone found a corpse in the stairwell, the blood all over the body was sucked dry, his face was dry and shrunk. And there was a terrible wound on his neck. I thought of the black shadow that jumped out of the storage room, and my heart sank. Let it all go, the Holy Son of the Holy See is here. There was a loud noise behind me, and I subconsciously turned sideways to avoid it. Facing the light, he saw clearly the blonde young man, who was surrounded by the white-robed clergy. I was stunned for a moment. Hong Mao was amazed. Holy Son Jianglai. It seems that this matter is not simple. I carefully avoided the Holy Son's gaze and hid behind the redhead. The redhead did not know why. Yang, what are you hiding? Hey, the Son glanced at us. You quickly raise your head and say hello to him. Maybe one day you will be captured by the vampire count, and no one will be able to save you. Redhead is clearly convinced of the vampire count's love for black-haired and black-eyed girls. I couldn't bear it anymore and pinched his hand hatefully. As soon as I looked up, I saw the surprised gaze of the red hair, throwing it behind me. Maybe nothing good. See you again, Yang Shi. The voice of the Holy Son came from behind him. I turned around and saw the white-robed clergy on either side posture as if they were catching pagans. It seems that you didn't take my last warning to heart. I was taken back to that church by Jianglai. Relax, Yang Shi. Jianglai glanced at my clenched lips and said softly, the Holy See is not as brutal as the vampires. Seeing you this time, the aura of the vampires on you is even stronger. I looked away and didn't answer. He paused. I have no intention of interfering in your private affairs, I want to tell you that he is dangerous. You think he's familiar, doesn't he? I raised my eyes suddenly and met his eyes. The light golden pupils fell on the light, clearly reflecting my shadow and emotions that I couldn't understand. How much do you know? I subconsciously asked, pulling at the hem of his wide sleeves. Jianglai's knuckles on the table moved and lowered his eyes. The attic of the castle is an inaccessible forbidden place, where all the truth is hidden. You just don't want to face it, Yang Shi. He tilted his head slightly, against the light, and his white robe outlined a thin silhouette. Last question. I stared at the light and said softly. Have we ever met? Ate for the rest of the day. I stumbled around, cautiously asking Mr. Lester for one thing. The goblet in his hand shook, and the scarlet liquid left sticky wine stains on the walls of the glass. Only low-level vampires will attack humans at will. Before Lester finished speaking, he paused for a moment. He probably remembered the night we first met. I couldn't hold back, and tilted my head and laughed out loud. Yang Shi. There was a helpless smile in his eyes, for no reason. I felt that Mr. Lester was in a good mood today. I thought about it and told Lester about the vampire attack at school. His expression remained calm, until he heard the Holy Son come to the school to investigate. And his brows furrowed slightly. I noticed something unusual. What's wrong, sir? It's okay. Lester casually sipped his wine, his tone cold. The people of the Holy See are all hypocrites with a good look. Don't get too close to him. Me, I stared at his scarlet wine-stained lips and silently counted 5, in my heart. 5.4.3.2.1. Snap. The goblet fell out of hand and shattered to the ground. Glass shards, mixed with scarlet wine stains, fell all over the ground. I carefully set up Mr. Lester. Sir. I leaned over to his face and shouted softly. Lester's eyes were closed and there was no response. Jianglai was right. Lester was really drunk in two mouths. I exhaled carefully and tiptoed to go up to the attic. But he was grabbed by the wrist. He was drunk and his pupils were extremely emerald. Sir. He looked down at me, and for a moment in a trance, the light refocused in his eyes. I felt a little guilty. You are drunk. I will help you. He trembled and rubbed my lips, not softly. The next moment, I heard his voice, and my heart seemed to have fallen into the snow outside the window. You're back, Lilybai. Lester called out dreamily. Lilybai. I can understand every syllable, but it is not real. Lily White. I in the blink of an eye, a fragment suddenly flashed back to my mind. Under the stained window glass of the church, when Jianglai and I met for the first time. The first time he saw me, his lips trembled, and he called out the name silently. I was in a trance. Lily White. Lester was really drunk. And his cold breath sprayed on the side of my neck, as if looking for a blood vessel in the back of my neck. I couldn't break free, knelt in his arms, and let him hold me. The sharp teeth pierced my neck, and the blood loss made me dizzy slightly. Mr. Lester. I stared at the white candle burning quietly behind me. I in the dizziness, I heard his voice, elegant and low, like the tone of reciting poetry. How we wish we could become butterflies and only live. 3 summers is fine. 3 days of joy is better than 100 years of loneliness. He lowered his head to touch my lips and exchanged a bloody kiss with me. Cold, rusty lips and teeth. But his eyes were so gentle. I mistakenly thought that he was an overly docile beast. But his prey is clearly me. I closed my eyes and kissed him on the lips viciously. 9 After that night, I always hid from Lester, intentionally or unintentionally, the vampire attack that occurred in the school. With the intervention of the Holy See and the Holy Sun, quickly came to light. The vampire you saw escaping from the storage room that day was Prince Andrew's henchman. Andrew. Jianglai saw my doubts and explained. Only 2 of the 7 ancestor-level princes of the Blood Clan are still awake, and now the Blood Clan is divided into 2 factions led by them. He lowered his eyes casually. One is Prince Andrew, and the other is you should know. Prince Lester. My heart trembled, and my eyelashes hung silently. For a while, the 2 sides were speechless. I had a gut feeling that something important was being ignored. Flashed in my mind, but I couldn't catch it. Hey, Yang, why have you been listless lately? The red-haired man poked his head and said, Did your employer deduct your salary? I waved my hand. Professor Eugene has a lawn party at home at night. Are you coming? With a ding-thong on my phone, I saw a new message from Lester. Go home early tonight. I quietly buckled my phone on the table. Come on. 10 Professor Eugene's yard is huge. Despite being mentally prepared, he couldn't help but gasp when he saw the bustling crowd on the lawn. Does Professor Eugene have so many students? I asked the red hair quietly. The red hair was obviously shocked too. The lights on the lawn were exaggerated and dazzling, and Redhead and I were pulled into the crowd by familiar classmates, and jumped to the music. As dusk fell, the red-haired man shouted that he was hungry, set up a grill, and fiddled with the charcoal. I followed the waiter to the back kitchen to get ready-made ingredients. There are fewer and fewer people along the way, but the more you go, the more wrong it becomes. He led me to the backyard. I paused and instinctively retreated, but was intercepted by a dark shadow emerging from the shadows. 7 or 8 dark shadows surrounded the man in black robes, and the man stopped slowly in front of me. Lowered his head, as if looking at me. I have no way to retreat. Are you Lester's little lover? My heart sank when Lester arrived. I was bleeding profusely and my eyes were darkening. Andrew, you have crossed over. I leaned weakly in Lester's arms, looking at the 2 sides who were tense, and Jianglai, who came to hear the news, frowning deeply. Suddenly, there was a thread in my brain that stringed together all the causes and consequences. Jianglai told me that the Black Shadow that day was Prince Andrew's subordinate. But I ignored that there was another person in the storage room that day, Professor Eugene. I gritted my teeth and coughed up a mouthful of blood, and a white shadow flashed. And the people of the Holy See had already gathered nearby. Professor Eugene is a man of the Holy See, and I was the bait for him to exterminate the vampires. That day in the storage room, he deliberately made a noise, deliberately left the dying vampire alive, and led me into the storage room. I found a strange black shadow, and would get up to chase it. Professor Eugene has exhausted his organs. Only Jianglai, the Holy Son who never cares about the world, will open the glass window and invite me into the small church. A little later, Andrew, who came to pick up his men, would appear around the corner under the stained window. Andrew will definitely sense the Lester aura in me. I am Lester's weakness and handle in front of others. And Lester found that I hadn't returned for a long time, and he would definitely go out to find me. But by that time, I had already been taken away by Andrew. The Blood Clan's civil strife began here. The Holy See could take the opportunity to enter and destroy these dark apostles in one fell swoop. The same is true for today's party. I thought groggily that the people of the Holy See were indeed hypocrites, with a good appearance. Jianglai, who was standing in the shadows, probably understood the situation. He tried to walk in front of me, but was stopped by Alan. I in the distance. I heard his voice. Yang Shi, I will give you an explanation. 11 Lester took me back for treatment and grounded me in the castle. I grabbed the corner of his clothes. Lester, you can't keep me locked up like this. He hugged me expressionlessly. You're so bad, Yang Shi. If I come one step later, you should lie in the coffin now. After a week in Lester captivity, I finally regained some strength. In the evening, in the dead of night, I lit a candle and went up to the attic. The attic of the castle is an inaccessible forbidden place, where all the truth is hidden. You just don't want to face it. Yang Shi, Jianglai's voice was very soft, and there was an emotion in his eyes that I couldn't understand. You can go anywhere on the estate, except for the attic on the top floor. Mr. Butler's gentle warning was still in my ears. My eyelashes trembled slightly. The next moment, I pushed open the attic door, but froze in place. It was an ice coffin, surrounded by a circle of burning white candles, flickering and extinguishing. In the ice coffin lay a girl with black hair and fancy clothes. Her eyelashes closed deeply, and her expression was like snow. Her hands were crossed on her chest, and she held a white rose in the void. None of this matters. The ice coffin is like a mirror, reflecting the girl in the ice coffin. The face exactly like mine. Those beautiful and bizarre dreams reappeared in front of my eyes, and shone into reality. I was shocked, staggering to hold on to the ice coffin, almost unsteady. Yang Shi. A cold and hoarse voice came from behind me, and I didn't look back. Just stared down at the shadow in front of me. He didn't move, just stood by the door, looking at me fixedly. I in the attic. Only the sound of the wind coming through the hall could be heard. I don't know how long it took, but I finally got up on my knees. Good night, sir. The silver cross I was holding tightly in my hand was frighteningly hot, and I looked up and smiled at him. He silently grabbed my right hand and then forcefully, one by one, pulled away my fingers. The silver cross Jianglai gave me lay quietly in the palm of my hand, exposed to the place where our eyes met. Yang Shi. Lester's tone was calm. Are you going to kill me? I closed my eyes and said softly, can I not? The silver cross fell to the ground, its voice crisp. But you can't keep me here for the rest of my life, sir. I'm not the rose in your courtyard. I took a deep breath and suddenly had some doubts. I don't understand. The living Yang, she will not be the dead Lillaby. Who do you like? A little candlelight fell in his eyes, and the melting light could not dissolve the green mist, clearly extinguished, pretending to be sincere. I can't see it clearly. 12 On the day the little princess of the Pedon kingdom was born, heavy snow fell on the misty forest, crows from nowhere pecked at the glass windows of the cathedral. The little princess was born with black hair and black eyes, which was incompatible with the blonde royal family. The priest prophesied that the baby girl was born ominous, and would bring disaster to the kingdom, and he was born with insufficient talent, and did not live to be 20 years old. The princess was expelled from the palace and kept in a remote chapel. At the age of 17, the kingdom of Pedon was defeated, and she became a gift to neighboring countries. Through me, into the city of endless suffering. Through me, enter the pit of eternal misery. Through me, enter the people of eternal calamity. I prayed devoutly, and on the altar in front of me was a dead owl, along with half a bat wing. the candlelight of the chapel flickered and flickered, and a faint light illuminated a fang in front of the altar. An ominous tooth of unknown origin. The door was suddenly pushed open from the outside, and I quickly jumped to the altar. Only to have time to clench the fangs in my palms. Your Excellency the Holy Sun. I turned my head guiltily, still showing a timely surprise on my face. The owl and bat wings on the altar were still in full swing, and I turned sideways to cover them. Lullaby. The beautiful blonde young man glanced at the black animal corpses on the small altar, his eyebrows furrowed deeply. Is it that if I come later, you are going to bleed? I stiffened my neck. Jiang Lai. I want to tell Grandma Kelly that you slander me. He laughed angrily and stretched out his palm to me. Hand it over. What? I subconsciously clenched my right hand. Jiang Lai grabbed my right hand and got the stolen goods. He sneered. If you don't explain it to me, I'll report it to Brother Ian. Okay. I bowed my head and said viciously, I will summon a demon the most powerful and take me away. The next sentence weakened. Jiang Lai, I don't want to marry that bald man. You know. The pastor said I wouldn't live to be 20 years old, at least before I die. I wanted to be happy. Jiang Lai got up to leave. I was in a hurry and pulled his sleeve. Hey, that's really it, Your Excellency Eternal Radiance, you won't tell Brother Ian about me, will you? The white-robed son coldly dropped 2 words, no. I looked at his distant back in annoyance and muttered, no, no, why are you so fierce? I knew he didn't like to hear me mention that prophecy, but I couldn't help it. The pastor's prophecy was like a thorn in my life, and it also pierced Jiang Lai to blood. That little holy son is interesting to you. A voice sounded from the window, cold and ethereal, like the moon in the sky. I turned stiffly and saw the man sitting on the windowsill with his legs bent, silver hair and green eyes, with a careless smile on the corners of his lips. Human, what are you calling me for? I was silent for a long time, and looked out the window at the vast snow. Pluck a white rose for me, my lord. 13 on a spring day, when the ice melts and the snow melts. On the eve of departure, as a trophy to a neighboring country. I was taken back to the palace, and the king's guards kept a close watch outside my room. The world is trapped in a net, and there's no way to escape. I looked at the white candles burning on the high platform in amazement. Whoever it is, no matter as long as he comes to this room tonight, I will go with him. The faint flame jumped suddenly, and I lowered my head to withdraw my expression. There is wind. I turned around suddenly. The silver-haired and green-eyed demon appeared in my room like a ghost. The light under his feet was the magic circle of space teleportation. My lord. I looked at the white rose in his hand in disbelief and burst into tears. Are you the god who came to save me? I hugged his neck helplessly. This question is too stupid. I know better than anyone else that he is a demon of the abyss who came at my call. Lullaby. The corners of his bloodless lips curled up, as if he was laughing. People who have white roses don't need gods. There was a sudden sound of hurried footsteps outside the door. Space mana fluctuations. Someone entered the princess's room. Come on. Please, please, the Holy Sun. My heart trembled, and I subconsciously looked up to ask for help from the man in front of me. He raised his eyebrows helplessly. Little Rose, I can't get out in such a short time. I saw the dark blood stains on his black robe. You guard outside, I'll go in alone. Jiang Lai's voice came from the distance at the door. Your Excellency, this is not, there are too many of you, it is a serious crime to alarm your highness. Jiang Lai's voice was calm. You can rest assured outside, if there is a mistake, I will take full responsibility. With the sound of the door opening and closing, Jiang Lai and Lester met each other. I timidly raised my eyes. Jiang Lai, his Adam's apple moved slightly and calmly looked away. At 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, there will be a 10-minute shift change, and the people of the Holy See will take over the king's guards. I will leave you the side door to the southwest of the palace. You have to get out within 10 minutes, otherwise I can't guarantee your safety. I hurriedly interrupted him. Then what do? I have a way, you don't have to worry about me. Jiang Lai has never looked at me with such a calm and straightforward gaze. I was so excited that I almost cried, and I gritted my teeth and nodded. He hugged me very lightly. Lullaby, don't cry. Live well. Something fell into his pocket, and the fabric sank slightly. The midnight bell rang. And I glanced back at the thin young man in white robes in the distance. I don't know. That was the last time Jiang Lai and I saw each other in our lives. It wasn't until I saw Lester sleeping in a coffin that I finally believed the housekeeper's words. He is not a demon, but he is not much better. Mr. Lester is a vampire, who has lived for thousands of years. I asked the butler quietly. Isn't he cold, Mr. Lester? Mr. Butler had a pair of blue eyes with a gentle smile. Blood clans have no body temperature. I nodded understandingly, hugged the bedding and jumped into the coffin. Lester, Butler, 14. Mr. Lester was elusive, and I often felt distressed that I couldn't catch him. The housekeeper Alan was very surprised by this, and he commented, "No one has ever played wild in front of his master." I thought casually. Probably, because I didn't have much time to live. I was confined to that remote little church for the first 17 years of my life. I and this square inch. Jiang Lai is my only friend and playmate. Because I persistently knocked on the stained glass window of the chapel, under which he was in place for his daily morning prayer. I in the middle of the mind. A shadow was cast in front of him. Mr. Lester is back. Good day, sir. I looked up and smiled at him. What are you thinking? He asked. I thought about it, omitted the pastor's prophecy, and spoke to him from the first time I knocked on the window, talking about Grandma Kelly who secretly hid jam for me in the chapel, about the strict brother Ian, about Jiang Lai. 17 years of long captivity is comparable to a torture. I don't even have the freedom of the white pigeons raised by the pastors in the church. After listening, Lester was silent for a long time. I laughed heartlessly. Sir, I want to see the outside world. Okay. Lester and I have seen the sapphire-like sea and walked through the forests inhabited by werewolves. I and the snowy fields, meet reindeer and auroras. Life is declining day by day, towards the scale that I have marked since I was born. When Lester reacted, it was too late. I refused to cooperate. So he imprisoned me and tried his best to prolong my life. But it didn't work. Lilybai, can I take you away? He almost begged me to accept his first embrace and transform into a vampire to live. But I was afraid of a long life and flatly refused. Strangely, the shadow of death has already hung over me, but I am so calm. Life is so lowly, my lord. I opened my eyes blankly and suddenly held his hand. Sir, after I die, can you please engrave an epitaph for me? What? I felt love first, and then I saw roses. Lester squeezed my wrist tightly, with such force that he seemed to rub me into my bones and blood. You should congratulate me, sir. I laughed heartlessly, but suddenly realized that I had never seen him gaffe like this. The vampire count who is high above shouldn't be like this. His life is eternal, like the eternal moonlight. He should also be heartless and ruthless. Otherwise, when my consciousness was distracted, I thought vaguely, and suddenly I felt a little sad. Otherwise, if I die, what will happen to him for the rest of his long life? I thought about it with difficulty, bent my eyes with the last of my strength, and smiled softly at him. If there is a next life, I will ask you for a white rose. I heard his voice before falling into darkness. He said, okay, 15 in the attic. White candles burn quietly, reflecting past and present lives. The memories of my past life are like a tide, but my body doesn't seem to have that much capacity. I don't know how long it took, but I raised my eyes in shock and burst into tears. Finally, the end. Lily was buried in the highest attic of the castle, the closest place to heaven. The vampire Lester is buried in the world, waiting day after day for the door of the manor, which is knocked on by people who have returned from afar. The holy son Jiang Lai guarded the cathedral for eternal life, and the glass window was never visited again. My past life. Their life. I coughed up a mouthful of blood. My memory revived, and my life passed by as quickly as in my previous life. Cursed lives seem to have that sudden pause. I will never be able to cross the age of 20. How I want you to swear allegiance to me and be my intimate lover, my rose. Lester closed his eyes, his voice astringent. And I will give you my first embrace, my long life. But, I don't want to. Blood races are a race abandoned by God on earth. A long life is not a blessing, but a curse of eternal loneliness. I end life with no end in sight. Only unbearable desolation remains. You don't have to stay with me, because I will be waiting for you here all the time, Yang Shi. I was stunned for a long time and smiled softly. Sir, why don't you ask me once? He almost trembled and held my face. Yang Shi, can you come with me? Lilibai, can I take you away? In past and present lives, two similar tones overlapped, and a foggy forest was hidden in his eyes. True and false, false and real, and I was a young deer lost in the forest, and I finally saw his love. If your love will make me go to hell, then let's go to hell together, my love. I climbed his neck and sacrificially raised my head to touch his cold lips. 3 days later, on the night of the full bloody moon, I opened my eyes. 1,000 years later, archaeologists found an oil painting called Eros in an abandoned castle, which was well preserved and caused a sensation all over the world. The black-haired and black-eyed Oriental girl sat in the fiery rose bushes with low eyebrows and smiled, her oil paint bright, just like back then. On the back of the painting, a line of Hebrew was written with love. Love never langmat.